There are common paths to getting into Division One basketball coaching, and then there is what Bryan Weber did. He joins us, and you know he's a good guy because he spells his first name exactly the way Bryan should be, with the Y. I have a Bryan with a Y spelling, so we know we're going to connect well. Bryan is on Twitter at Coach_Weber. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. I'm an FSR anchor for Fox Sports Radio and excited to highlight the path, the inspiring journey of Bryan Weber as he is now the associate head coach for Division One Stony Brook. And how he got there is a fascinating journey that we are about to unravel. Bryan, what made you think that you could become a Division One coach in a way that few others have done, the route?
Yeah, I honestly I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated from high school. And I was just trying to, I had always played sports my whole life. And when I attended the University of Akron as an undergrad, I just needed some sort of a semblance of a team. I needed to have something to do, a hobby, and I went back to my to the high school that I graduated from, and I just started, coaching low level 8th grade and 9th grade basketball. And, very quickly I found that I was pretty passionate about, teaching. And, and as my, love for coaching grew, my looking around and saying, what would I want to do for my career, sort of started to formulate. And, and who doesn't want to, coach basketball for a living. So I not necessarily thinking it was possible at the time, but my love grew, and I finally obviously made the decision to actually try to attack it full blow a couple years after that.
So you went from a full-time teaching position in high school to then an unpaid position at Akron at the Division One coaching level, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm sure that your family was probably like, well, Bryan, what are you doing? Like, you have this setup, you have this stable income, and now you're like, well, wait a minute. Now I finally have my life goal. I want to get into Division One coaching. Who tried to talk you out of this, and how did you calm them down and say, look, I've got a vision. It will all work out?
Yeah, I think that's where I was pretty lucky, to be honest with you, because I've always had supportive parents. I've had guys that, have had my back and believed in me from an early stage. And, and obviously there was a lot of people that, the position I had was at a good school district in a state where it's hard to get teaching positions. And it was my first year out of, college. And, eventually I had convinced my parents and the people around me that this was a good decision, just based off the fact that I would end up having my master's, worst case scenario. But the reality was, I don't think there was many people that were looking at my decision and saying, like, this is definitely going to lead to where he thinks it is. But it was more so let's just let him chase this, and eventually he'll come to the reality that it's not realistic, which luckily that didn't happen.
That seems to be what I seem to find a trait from you is that people don't understand the power of you, Bryan, believing in yourself. Everybody has a certain perception of, like, if they were in your position, why they might not make it, but they just don't understand the will and the determination that you exude. And that's why you've made it against some of the lower odds, you could say. When you got to Akron as that first opportunity in the coaching ranks as an unpaid volunteer position, what was it about you that won over the Akron coaching staff that they were able to make a spot for you on that team?
Yeah, so that story was a little interesting. So I had so basically when I was teaching, I had emailed probably 1,000 coaches, Division
Wow.
3, 2, 1, NAIA, and just, I would love a graduate assistant position. Didn't really know what it meant, didn't really know what it entailed to get on, but and I've actually, I still have them, just rejection letter after rejection letter, just don't have a position, blah, blah, blah. So finally, my high school assistant coach, his name's Mike Fewline. He is now the head coach at Mount Union, which is a very good Division III school in Ohio. They were top 25 this year. And he had just gotten that job at Mount Union. And I was going to, when I quit, I was going to just go to school and help him out in any capacity. I was going to
Mhm.
be basically his ball boy.
Yeah.
And he pulled me aside and said, like, what are your ultimate goals? And he was not old at the time, but he had a good idea. And I said, I'd love to be a Division I head coach, which, obviously that was me being naive at the time and just saying what my ultimate goal would be. And he said, well, I'm not going to be able to help you put you in these circles of the people you need to be in to get in that world. But I'm friends with Rick McFadden, who's now an assistant at Duquesne with Keith Dambrot, who was at Akron at the time. And he said, just meet with him. And if you're not working for money for me, then, not working, people will take free labor,
Yeah.
if you do a good job. So let me just get you meeting with him. And I met with them, and I'm sure they didn't have any idea why I would ever want to do what I was doing. But, essentially I just sat with Coach McFadden, and I said, I'll do anything you guys want me to do. And I'll, and I didn't get anything like they didn't give me a shirt. I remember I had no idea how, the branding of college basketball or anything. So I remember showing up with a bookstore University of Akron shirt that I bought myself that was Under Armour, and we were Nike, and everybody was like, hey, you can't wear that in here. And I'm like, well, I don't have any gear.
Wow.
That was kind of how the whole thing started. And then throughout the year, obviously my role grew, and obviously eventually those are some of my closest people. They're the other graduate assistant is the ops guy at Duquesne now. He was the best man at my wedding. And,
Oh.
Coach Dambrot, who was the bronze coach, was the head coach there. And, I can call him at any time. Like him and I have become super close over the years. So, really good people over there.
Now that you've had to lay the land and you've had experience in coaching Division I, and now you're with Stony Brook as the associate head coach, and Brian Weber is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. If you were to script like a pie chart from all the experiences you've garnered and saying, okay, this percentage is what makes a Division I coach successful, and then there's this amount of chunk that makes that coach that much successful, how much are you giving it to relationship building? Like there's the X's and O's and there's the recruiting, and certainly that might be intertwined with relationship building, but how much of the pie chart is relationship building because of how much it helped you get into the position you are today?
Yeah, I would say, not just college basketball, but I would say any industry. I would say 90% is who you know. I mean, and that's especially when you're making moves. I think a lot of times there's a lot of people that are qualified to do things that they just don't get an opportunity to do because they don't know the right people, and they don't know how to even get a chance to meet those people. So I think that it's a huge part. And for me personally, it's kind of how I built my whole career from the ground up. Was just, when I was in that position at Akron, I was writing letters to coaches almost daily across the industry. And just, and I remember people being like, what are you doing? And I really had no idea, but I just kind of had an indication that, like, this is sort of something that's going to help me, because you never know who that person is that's going to be in the right spot at the right time that you come across and has an opportunity that you might meet the criteria for. And in that realm, honestly, the way that I moved up was through that. I went to a conference called the Rising Coaches Conference in Las Vegas, and they do a great job. They're still around today, the Rising Coaches, and they just their entire purpose is, young up and coming guys who want to get in the business. Most of them are managers or, guys that didn't play at a high level, and they connect them and have head coaches and guys in the business come and speak at their conferences. And Coach Caputo, who is the associate head coach at Miami, who's my biggest mentor in college basketball, spoke at that Rising Coaches Conference. And literally there was probably only 40 of us at the time at the conference, and gave his phone number out to everybody. And
Wow.
throughout that time at Akron, I stayed in touch with Coach Caputo and met up with him at the Final Four. And then when they had a grad assistant job, like an actual paid for my master's type graduate assistant job, that's when I made that move. So I got to move around. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's the extent of how that happened.
Wow. So you have created this path, and what needs to be heralded about you is I think that where we are today as a society, a lot of people want to get to some spot, but they don't want to put in the work, and they have a goal in mind, but they don't want to be patient into getting there. And you have done whatever humble, low on the totem pole tasks to get to where you are today. Why do you have such an appreciation for where you are at the moment? Because I know there are coaches occasionally that'll be like, well, what's next? Or, hey, he's doing that, I want to do that. But you seem to be so grounded. And I think that that's a really important characteristic of you.
Yeah, I think it starts with just loving what you do, right? So like, if I was miserable when I woke up in the morning and I didn't like where I was or the kids I was around or the head coach I work for, the administration I work for, there could be maybe another level of, hey, I want to do something else. But the reality is, we're super lucky to do what we do as college basketball coaches. And I think there's a lot of jaded people that are in the industry that, they look around and they just don't understand, like, when I go get my Starbucks coffee in the morning and I see somebody hanging off a skyscraper and wiping a window down, like, that's real hard physical work. What we do is just time consuming. So it's weekends, it's traveling, but it's coaching college basketball. It's a game, it's a sport. So, and you also get an opportunity to really make an impact on young people's lives. And, and it's kind of a cool thing because, now I've gotten to the point where, I've been in basketball, whether, from the time, we had guys that I coached as eighth graders that are now in their late 20s and getting married and having kids, and they're successful. And, and just staying in touch with those people over the years has been something that I've always, been really happy with. And then I think just like to this whole point, the fact that I started it from a position where I still look around and I don't take anything for granted, because I know that this is something that not a lot of people get to do. And I honestly think that what we do is the best thing you can do for a career, in terms of, we have games, right? Like there's I have something to look forward to on a daily basis. So, those things, I try to stay positive about it. Obviously, everybody has goals. Everybody has ultimate goals of where they want to be with their career. But, right now we're in a really great spot. So, if I was in a bad mood, I would be, it would be weird, man. I don't know what would make me happy.
No, I think that you would not be in the position you are if you had that bad mood and if you didn't have the approach to life and coaching as you do. When you were getting those rejection letters, how did you not let it get to you when you were trying to find your niche, trying to find your opening in the coaching ranks?
I think it was more so just the fact that I knew I was going to be involved with college basketball. I just didn't know where or how or why. So, the fact that I always considered there might be a reason that there might be a time when I need to work for free.
Sure.
And that's part of why I got out so early. So, when I left my teaching job, I was 23 years old. And the good advice I did get, I can't remember who gave it to me, was, if you are going to do this, you have to do it now, because, I think a lot of people that want to get into college basketball or do something, that not a lot of people get a chance to do, they wait a little too long, and then they get comfortable, and then they have a family, and then, then all of a sudden your cushy every 2-week paycheck becomes not just about you. It becomes about supporting the people in your circle. And, and I didn't have anything holding me back, So like when I moved however many thousand miles from Ohio to Florida to go to Miami, it was, no question. It was like, oh, do I want to work in Miami, Florida? Yeah. Like, oh, of course. Like, and I had never even been there before. So that's the kind of thing you can do at an early age. So I was never really dejected by anything, but it was more like just trying to find an angle of how do I navigate this. And looking back, like just my lack of feel on how anything worked, it's staggering that any of this stuff ended up working out, after now this being whatever that being 12 years ago almost now, and just how much you learn over the years.
I don't think it's staggering. It's a commitment to how much you want it, and you were going to see it through, no matter what it took, where you were, where you had to be. You put yourself in the most opportune of situations so that you could create this path that you are putting forth right now. Bryan Weber is with us, associate head coach for Division I Stony Brook. I'm Bryan Fenley. You can find Bryan on Twitter at coach_Weber. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. You spoke about your coaching inspirations, those you look up to, those who have mentored you through the ranks. I want to change up the question a little bit and ask you, what about a player who you have overseen grow in a way that matured you as a coach, in a way that perhaps a player hadn't done before around you?
Yeah, I think I mean there's been a lot. There's been a lot of guys who from the beginning, I'm talking guys that you don't know about to guys like when I was at Miami, somebody like Shane Larkin, who was the
Oh,
17th pick in the NBA draft. Now we're from the time I was at Stony Brook, we've had this is my 5th year here. So we've seen a full class through. We've seen, kids get recruited as juniors in high school, bring them here, and now they're, seniors or graduated. So I think everybody has had different impacts on me. My favorite part about that is guys who maybe were underdogs. We have had some guys come through our system here who, like a kid like Junior Santil. So Junior is the first kid in his family ever. So mom, grandma, uncles that graduated and got a degree from a university, right? And he's been playing professional basketball at a high level in Spain since he graduated here. And, he just is so grateful and he's going to get opportunities now for his kids, that just through his experiences that wouldn't have happened if he didn't get an opportunity to come to school and get a degree. And and he had his bumps. It wasn't always easy for him academically. And we've had multiple stories like that where it's not always about what's happening on the court. It's about getting a degree from a top 50 public university in the country, and what it might mean for them when the basketball stops dribbling at like it does for everybody at some point.
what is it about what you do? And I think that your recent latest response here will play into this next answer to this question. You got into this business for a certain, love of the game, but also, where do you feel like you get the most fulfillment on, like, I don't know if satisfaction is the right word, but where you get the level of, you're so proud and you have a heartwarming tone to what you do? Like, what derives the most? Again, I don't think satisfaction is the right word, but the level of pride and what makes you smile for what you get to do in your role as a coach when you look at it and all the different responsibilities you have.
Well, I think we have a pretty unique opportunity as coaches to make an impact through something that young people actually want to do. And I think sometimes as a teacher, you get stuck into a box of, I'm teaching history, you don't love history, and I'm being forced now to try to make an impact on
Sure.
your life through something that you don't really want to do. Everybody who comes to school to play here for the most part has a passion for the game of basketball, and they have goals that at least the majority of them somehow revolve around the sport. And then through time, what ends up happening is you spend so much time with them and you get them in opportunities where, hey, I have your best interest in mind. I want to see you succeed more than I need to see me succeed or the coaches succeed. And I think what ends up happening then is there's a trust and a love and a real relationship that forms between people that, it only happens in, certain industries. And I think that with what we do, we're constantly spending time with these dudes and constantly rebounding for them in the gym, or just, having a conversation about what's going on at home for them. And they don't even realize, as time's going on, that somebody is actually impacting them. They're just hopefully starting to believe in themselves a little bit more. They're starting to see, like, oh, this is actually a possibility. Playing professionally, doing this, and getting paid for it is actually something that's possible. Getting my degree is actually possible. And then hopefully having a family and being a contributing member of society is something that's possible. And for some of the kids that we coach and recruit and some situations they come from, that's not something they are born with or that anybody's told them until they come here. So that kind of stuff.
I would think one of the most rewarding parts of your job, as sort of what you were hinting to, is when you allow a player to see something in himself that they didn't think that they could do. And that could be coming into your program, having a certain skill set, working under your watch and your staff, and then transforming into someone, like you said, that not only can play at a high level with you guys, but then channel that into making some money off of it professionally. Especially when that player had not a lot of a vision that could be a possibility. And that is kudos to what you guys have done and continue to do as a staff. And as a coach, you're always in that pursuit of learning. Like, you can never learn enough about the game and experiences from other coaches and reaching out. And there's a large web of networking that goes into it, as far as, hey, what can I do to become a better coach? Where do you think that you can do the most learning at this point? Because you're, as any coach that wants to be something special, and you are continuing to be that, there's got to be that never ending thirst to want to learn. So where do you want to do the most learning? Where do you feel like you can have the most effect in trying to gain more and more information?
Yeah, I think in all aspects, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't think there's one specific thing that I'm great at and one specific thing that I need to work at a bunch. I think that, you know, anybody really, I mean, whether I hope I feel this way 25 years down the road. It starts on the floor, probably, because I wasn't a high level player. So, as time progressed, obviously my knowledge of X's and O's, my knowledge of just actual things that guys, maybe started a little bit ahead of me and understanding, that was my initial sprint to catch up to where everybody else was. Now going into year 5, being the defensive coordinator for our team, those kind of things, I feel like I've made a lot of ground in that way. But in all walks of coaching, which coaches wear a lot of different hats, there's never a time when you feel like, oh, I've made it. And I think there are guys that do feel that way. And I think they have a very short life in this world. We all have assistants have 1 year contracts. Head coaches usually have 3 or 4 year contracts. So, I think that some of the issues that people get into sometimes as coaches is ego based. And I think it's I know more than I know more than you, or I know more than I have to, or, and then it just becomes, it's not working. So it's not my fault. It's got to be somebody else's fault.
Yeah,
Right. And then there's
sure.
just a lot of anger and hostility. So I think we all have to learn. We have to just continue to read and continue to study the game and study people and relationships and team building. And there's a lot, good thing it's 2020. There's a lot of data out there, so we can, if you want to get better, you can get better.
Here's what I love. I've seen some of the photos and the videos of you guys practicing as a team now, and I see the smiles galore on the staff and the guys getting up shots, and how morale boosting that must be to get the guys together. When you get in the gym with your players right now, how does it feel knowing, some of the complications we had earlier in the year, but to get everybody together and realizing the power that it is to have everybody there, and just, again, the cathartic feeling to having the team unite?
Yeah, I think the perspective is probably the best word. That's the word I've been using for a lot of people that have asked like what it's like to get back. And what I mean by that is I think that we all have gotten a ton of perspective to things that we I think we were taking for granted a little bit, like just being able to get on the floor every single day, being able to get extra shots, being able to compete, and those are things that we're used to being here in the summer for both summer sessions with our guys. We have been here basically year round, in the 4 years that I've been here. So this is the first time that it's been completely taken away from us. Spring, we had our conference championship game canceled last year. To the summer, both summer sessions were canceled, to the point where we just now over the last month have gotten back on the floor. So I think a lot of what you see there is super natural, like just raw emotion from some of the guys of just, hey, I'm ready. Maybe I would have been mad that I had to do this closeout drill a year ago. Now I'm like, please, I was sitting in my house for 6 months. So, just that kind of thing. I think our level of energy in our gym right now is as high as I can ever remember it, just from a happiness of it was taken away, and now we get an opportunity to do what we were taking for granted.
Yeah. Hey, coach, you want me to run lines? Yeah, I can't wait. I'll be right there. I can't wait to partake in that.
Exactly.
The final question I have for you, and Brian Weber is with us, associate head coach for Stony Brook. I'm Bryan Fenley, is surveying the season outlook for this team that you have. What are the strengths?
Yeah, I think we have a very new group. So we had a couple kids that graduate transferred, which a lot of mid-major coaches have to deal with. So we have a new group, a super talented group. One thing we always pride ourselves on is things you can't teach. So being big, athletic, for our level, strong, and that's why we've had a lot of success against high major teams since I've been here. And I think that really with the new group, the questions are going to come from how well does the talent mesh together. But since I've been here, I can't remember looking out there and saying we have had more ability than we have right now. And it's just a matter of, how well does some of these pieces come together. We had a junior college All-American, which is the first junior college All-American that we've had since I've been here. We had a former top 150 recruit in the country and Frankie Policelli, who, if he doesn't pan out, then I'll be surprised because he's super talented. We have Mo Gee, who's on a lot of NBA draft boards right now as a late second rounder. 6'11", shoots it, handles it, passes it. So I think we have enough to be really good. Now it's just about having the pieces come together and how do they play together and all the other things that go into winning.
All that's going to happen because you're there and you're with a great staff, and the program is in a really good position thanks to everything that you're doing to help move this Stony Brook program forward. I am thrilled for you for this upcoming season. I know we saw the timeline of, I think it was like November 25th is what the NCAA has ruled as far as when games can start. And I will be watching intently, and let's do this again sometime because people need to understand that Stony Brook brings it. And, you might be a mid-major, but I tell you what, you bring it when it comes to taking on some of these Power 5 schools. And it's a battle. It's a battle. And you certainly are someone who needs to be hailed. And I know you're a coach, and I know you like to deflect to the players because they're the ones that are doing all this and why you want to serve them. But you, Brian, deserve to be spotlighted, to be hailed for what you've done. Your unorthodox path has worked out so swimmingly for you, and it's an inspiration to have you on. And thanks so much for sharing your story. Can't wait to watch you guys on the court here in a couple weeks or months.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me on.